Envision yourself traversing the realm of Middle-earth as an immortal elf, blessed with an unaging physique, the ability to enter a state of rest while retaining a vigilant awareness, unparalleled agility, extraordinary regenerative capacities, and strength surpassing that of mere mortals. Celebrimbor of the Shadow of Mordor / War universe is all that, but even better, as he is an early elf with similar power to Galadriel and his godfather Fëanor, who is one of the strongest elves in all of Middle-earth's history. However, through all of his strength, Celebrimbor grew so little over the thousands of years of life. He remains enchanted by power with his want to rule over all of Middle-earth. He remains somewhat human, an elven ruler who had everything any human or elf could ever dream of obtaining in 100 lifetimes, wanted more, and was easily taken advantage of by Sauron, leading to the disastrous circumstances we face in Shadow of Mordor. In our own human narrative, we find ourselves trapped in the intricate threads of power dynamics. The endless quest for wealth by the already wealthy casts shadows upon those below, burdened by the weight of unreachable aspirations. Across the sprawling expanse of history, wars unfold as nations grapple for supremacy, an unrelenting quest to assert dominance over neighbors, with the toll measured in the staggering casualties left in their wake. Amidst this complex situation, selfish psychopaths emerge, driven by twisted hunger for power that inflicts unspeakable suffering upon individuals, leaving a permanent mark on the collective human experience. Celebrimbor, with all of his experience in life, unfortunately could not escape these sins that plagued our own human world. He just wanted more until eventually he would lose it all. Using the Shadow of Mordor / War games, let us take a look together exactly why Celebrimbor was unable to escape the temptations that plague society, and what exactly makes Celebrimbor the most human character in the pair of games that prominently feature him. Celebrimbor's story begins in the Brightlord DLC, which was a part of the Shadow of Mordor game. Before the events of Talion, Celebrimbor is the ruler of the Second Age Eregion when a visitor arrives saying he was sent from the Valar. The visitor presents an admirable mithril hammer that Celebrimbor accepts with much praise, even saying it is so fine a gift. Together, Celebrimbor and the visitor instruct the Aragon smiths to craft a set of rings that would be known as the Rings of Power we are currently familiar with. Unfortunately, the visitor was no elf, and instead he was Sauron and had deceived Celebrimbor to craft the One Ring along with the other Rings of Power, and some elvish rings for Celebrimbor himself. Using the One Ring, Sauron could force the whole Dominion under his thumb with unstoppable force. Celebrimbor's other rings were the only things left to oppose Sauron, who had no idea where they were. So he attacked and conquered Eregion. With Celebrimbor in his control, Sauron would torture him to find the elvish rings, while also perfecting the One Ring by being able to mask its power and give it a will of its own. Celebrimbor held out against the torment and managed to capture the One Ring for himself, which he could now use to destroy Sauron and avenge his family with a new army he could build with the ring. Filled with rage, Celebrimbor dominated Uryx, creating an army to rival Sauron's in power, which would quickly lead to the two in battle. During the battle, Sauron reveals that Celebrimbor's family is alive and is actually in his possession. Celebrimbor would once again fall for Sauron's tricks, and using the ring teleported to Sauron as the battle raged on around them. Even with all of his experience, Celebrimbor couldn't remain composed to take down Sauron, but instead underestimated him and believed in the ring's power too much. The ring seemed to aid Celebrimbor as he was able to overpower Sauron and all of his allies during the fight, but it wasn't until Celebrimbor raised his sword for the final blow on Sauron that fate changed hands. The One Ring was loyal to Sauron. The ring's will was to serve its master, and when Celebrimbor was about to kill him, the ring left Celebrimbor's finger and placed it on its true master, Sauron. Celebrimbor lost. Accepting defeat, he was reunited with his family. However, Sauron quickly murdered them before his own eyes. In what is honestly a sign of mercy, Sauron dismantles the rest of Celebrimbor's life with the gift he presented to Celebrimbor when they first met, that beautiful mithril hammer. The beginning and the end of Celebrimbor's defeat. Celebrimbor may be dead, but his story is just getting started. For creating the rings, Celebrimbor is banished from death and is instead a wraith who must roam Middle-earth until the ring is unmade. This is when Celebrimbor ties into the main storyline with Talion, as the two become one rage-fueled beast wanting revenge on Sauron for all the pain he caused them both. Strangely, Celebrimbor deceives Talion with lies, saying that they are trapped, unable to join death without vengeance. Celebrimbor even hides his past, claiming he does not remember, which I think is a lie, but I'll talk about that later when we get farther into the story. The next piece of the puzzle comes from Gollum, who leads the two to a relic of Celebrimbor's past, which shows the conclusion of Celebrimbor's family. Talion asks, but Celebrimbor dismisses it, saying he only remembers images that he wishes he hadn't, but in turn also says that this is perhaps why they are drawn together, since they both suffered a similar fate. This smells like a little bit of bullshit, since Celebrimbor did choose Talion, but whatever, not the most sus thing ever. Anyhow, Gollum also recognizes Celebrimbor as the Bright Master and worships him religiously. Wanting to show the Bright Master his faith, Gollum leads them to another relic, this time being the crown that rested upon Celebrimbor's head previously. This new vision shows Sauron appearing before Celebrimbor in his fair disguise, presenting him with the mithril hammer that Celebrimbor praises so highly. Later, Talion confronts Celebrimbor, stating that these are a waste of time, as these dreams only provide more questions. Celebrimbor divulges that these are not dreams, but the actual past of his living life, and with each one he grows more powerful. To me, this is why I think Celebrimbor is lying. These are not just for him to remember, but to get stronger, which we know is Celebrimbor's strongest desire. A desire that has cost him everything before, a very human-like desire. It just seems like he tapped on the whole remembering thing so that Talion would know his secret motive of wanting to use him to defeat Sauron and take his place. But the story continues with the pair following Gollum once again to an odd relic, smithing tongs. Grasping the relic, the vision shows the crafting of the rings of power, with the visitor seen in the last vision with the gift. At the end, the visitor praises the elven smith, and the name of the smith is Celebrimbor. The vision ends and Talion is immediately taken back, saying that Celebrimbor is the greatest smith of the Second Age. Celebrimbor replies by saying he remembers his name now, that it is he who shaped the history of Middle-earth, and that he did craft the Rings of Power. Maybe showing a little bit of ego, you know. Don't toot your horn too much, you're dead, dumbass. Before any more can be said, a Graug interrupts them. After Talion escapes the Graug, they talk briefly, but most importantly, Talion is still empathetic to Celebrimbor as he knows the legends of Sauron deceiving him and torturing the Wraith. Gollum, desperate to learn about the precious, opts to take them to more treasures, as he calls them. Before getting back with Gollum though, the pair find themselves face to face with the Hammer of Sauron. Talion defeats him, getting a piece of revenge for his family, but Celebrimbor is unhappy. He says there was much to learn from him, but Talion claps back saying would he not have done the same for his own family. This is interesting because the whole time it is Celebrimbor who preaches the vengeance they both want, but when Talion gets some of that revenge on a black captain that was part of the raiding with his family's death, Celebrimbor chastises him for acting too hastily, like either of them would have thought about that in that situation. I'm telling you, Celebrimbor is lying and he definitely knows his past. He's just being real fucking sus. Moving along, we can see the gang has one black captain down and that leaves two more to go, and the next move is to find another relic, hoping to get some more info. The next relic is the Mithril Hammer, and the vision shows the crafting of the 3 rings along with Sauron's crafting of the 1 ring on his own. This one is consequently big, as obviously it has the 1 ring being crafted, but just adds to Celebrimbor's power as the hammer is an iconic piece of his past. After meeting the queen and going through their conversation, she ends up sending the pair to find another relic, and briefly before the attack to save the soldiers carrying the relic, Celebrimbor says that they only need what the soldiers have, and not to let emotions cloud Talion's vision. That's a little crazy to say, as they're supposed to oppose Sauron. Even though it is out of spite, letting some men die because you don't want to risk anything saving them is rather cruel. They easily have the power to take out some Urix, so Celebrimbor is seemingly getting more inhumane as his power grows, or as his memory comes back, whichever one you want to believe. But of course, I personally think Celebrimbor is only becoming more powerful, and that's why he's losing his humanity and just begins thinking about how to get more powerful, no matter the sacrifice. Almost acting something like Nike, not caring that child labor is immoral as long as they are simply getting richer. The relic they receive once again doesn't matter, as it just shows Celebrimbor losing to Sauron after he makes the 1 ring. What matters is that with this finding, Celebrimbor is now powerful enough to dominate the Urix, to build an army of his own, as well as to cause conflict in the Urix army himself. So the two go and dominate a Urix captain with the hope they can influence it to become a war chief. Another relic is found while chilling with Torvin, and it once again doesn't show much, just that Celebrimbor was working on the ring after being captured by Sauron. This is already known as part of the legend, so Talion once again continues without any lip. After some fun adventures with Torvin, which I'm sure Celebrimbor hated, the duo would move in to take on the Tower of Sauron. When confronting the tower, he reveals that Celebrimbor chose Talion and can release him at any time for death. Celebrimbor isn't bound to Talion, but rather he is using him to seek out his own vengeance. It is no wonder that he doesn't care if Talion gets vengeance, since it got in the way of his own journey for vengeance and power. A selfish move that taps more into a human side of things rather than an elvish side of things. But I mean, Talion's already dead, so it's not like Celebrimbor's ruining his life. Who wouldn't use someone to get what they want if they had no consequences, right? Who would do that? Maybe someone evil? To get ahead often comes by stepping on the heads of others, and Celebrimbor doesn't have to even think twice. Like a politician lobbying with the big corporation to get funding to continue climbing, the politician can campaign for a higher petition and will pass legislation to satisfy the corporation, which usually harms the average consumer. For Celebrimbor, it's not about you, it's about him. The tower doesn't stand much of a chance, and after executing him in a brutal rage, Talion yells at Celebrimbor for deceiving him. Celebrimbor says it was Sauron's doing, which Talion immediately calls bullshit on. Pretty lame excuse, because while it's technically Sauron's fault, it's like blaming a cookie for looking so tasty when you get your hand caught in the jar. Talion doesn't stick around to argue anymore and angrily moves on to finish the job with the Black Hand. I think if Celebrimbor at least offered an apology and had a heart-to-heart about just needing the help of Talion, I could be a bit more empathetic to Celebrimbor's cause. Unfortunately, he unapologetically shifts the blame and eats Talion's anger, because deep down he probably knows it's warranted. Celebrimbor once again comes off as extremely selfish from this interaction, as he's keeping Talion by force from his family who he desperately wants to be with. Even though Celebrimbor was born of power and the ability to rule a nation as a king, he remains self-centered as if the world revolves around him. Humans often feel the world revolves around them, as it speaks to our survival instincts to think of ourselves instead of others, as well as simply seeing the world from our perspective. Celebrimbor has lived thousands of years. His need for survival doesn't exist the same way a human who lives for a fraction of the time lives to survive. Furthermore, Celebrimbor is experiencing life through Talion. He is precisely seeing life through another individual's perspective, and yet he can still force no empathy through his clouded egotistical vision. Putting their differences aside, as now there are many showing, Talion forges his way to complete the journey with the confrontation with the Black Hand of Sauron. Upon meeting, the Black Hand immediately stuns Talion with the vision, and as the two recover, the Black Hand cuts into his throat to use a ritual that pulls Celebrimbor from Talion to fuel Sauron's power. Without Celebrimbor, Talion is dying as the cut in his neck begins to resurface. Talion fights sluggishly, dodging and swinging wildly. As Sauron is preparing to deliver a blow to Talion, Celebrimbor breaks through and holds back Sauron's strike. This gives Talion enough time to recollect himself and deliver a blow straight through Sauron, which kills the Black Hand and destroys this form. Even with Talion getting all the vengeance for the loss of his family, he decides to heroically carry on. Celebrimbor is not going to say no, and the two look to Mount Doom and decide a new ring is needed to continue their quest to bring down Sauron. With the conclusion of Shadow of Mordor, Talion and Celebrimbor have put everything behind them to serve a greater purpose in Middle-earth. However, I believe Talion has done this, but I do not think of this of Celebrimbor. Celebrimbor is fortunate that Talion is a brave soul who thinks more of others than himself. Celebrimbor now gets to continue to use Talion for his conquest, even after deceiving Talion multiple times during their first journey together. His mission is far from heroic, and ultimately, we've seen multiple times that what Celebrimbor wants from all of this is power. I wouldn't be surprised if the idea of crafting a new ring actually came from Celebrimbor, as that would be the easiest way for him to get stronger and work without Talion. But we don't know this because it is Talion who looks to Mount Doom and says it as Celebrimbor fades away from sight. It honestly just fits his character too much to have a new ring, because the only people Celebrimbor has shown he cares about are those that he can use and rule over as their superior, ever since his family's passing. Admittedly, Shadow of Mordor does not give a good look into how Celebrimbor is thinking, as most of it is done by Talion. However, most of the inferences I made are because of what I know after playing Shadow of War, because the second game expands not only on the gameplay, but takes the story and transcends it far above the first game. It completes the image of what Celebrimbor has been thinking since first coming across Talion and why exactly he would take him on as his host. The game starts with the pair crafting a new ring to rival Sauron's, but as it is crafted, Celebrimbor is swept away by a dark cloud, leaving Talion with just the ring. Celebrimbor is kept in the lair of Shelob the spider, who offers Talion a trade. The ring for Celebrimbor. The loyal Talion accepts the trade to only be scolded by Celebrimbor. Why does Celebrimbor scold Talion for obtaining his freedom? Because Talion gave up Celebrimbor's power. The power Celebrimbor put his soul into, and so he immediately attempts to attack Shelob, but is quickly submitted as she is far stronger with the ring. The spider then leaves the duo with the vision that sends them to Minas Ithil to protect the Palantir. As the two arrive at Minas Ithil, they are greeted by the city being under siege by Sauron's army as they gun for the Palantir. Celebrimbor says that the fate of the city is not their concern, and that they should take the Palantir and pretty much dip. Talion disagrees, and they instead protect the city, hoping to protect the Palantir in turn. While Celebrimbor is right, getting the Palantir and leaving would be the best for taking on Sauron, he has reached a new low of empathy. He is disconnected from the struggle of mankind fighting against Sauron, the people who have suffered the same as he has. He puts himself above all of them as he is the only one who can truly stop Sauron with the right power. Nothing else matters, no matter how hard anyone else tries. He's a morally corrupt dictator who is looking to attack another city, not for the benefit of his people, but for his own benefit as he gets the spoils of the war and completes his own legend. The image that forms around Celebrimbor's morals becomes abundantly clear immediately from the game's beginning, and it will not slow down. Shadow of War also starts quickly dropping hints as to what exactly Celebrimbor is to the story. Celebrimbor is often shown mirroring Sauron in his abilities, craft, and even purpose. Already we have the crafting of a powerful ring to grow in strength and the ability to dominate Uruks for a new army. In Minas Ithil, Sauron has captured towers and marked them to gain sight. Celebrimbor says that one of those was his, and so with Talion they take them back and essentially copy them, but for Celebrimbor turning the mark from a fiery eye to a blue one to match the Wraith. Again, drawing a comparison to Sauron and how they both operate like they are the same. The duo finds themselves rescuing Gollum, who turns out to be employed by Shelob, and leads them to her so that they can make their next move. The crew goes and defeats an assassin that Shelob's vision showed, leading to the death of people Talion cared about, but obviously not Celebrimbor, you don't care. With the assassin dead though, Celebrimbor once again reminds Talion that the people in Minas Ithil do not matter and that is about the Palantir. Talion bluntly asks him how much of his soul was lost in the ring, and god damn is that a fucking roast. Even Talion is not just realizing how corrupt the Wraith is, but also he's beginning to understand exactly what he is. Throughout Talion's visits to Shelob seeking the visions, Celebrimbor and Shelob have stood at odds with each other. Shelob does not want to hear Celebrimbor, but wants to help Talion, while also warning him of the cost it will take to defeat Sauron. At first I thought maybe they had some history together we would learn about, but instead it turns out that Shelob can see Celebrimbor. She sees exactly who he is and what he is doing. Shelob can essentially see everything with the ring. Her powers let her see who Talion is and who Celebrimbor is as soon as she gets the ring. When Celebrimbor once again asks for the ring back so they can bring back Sauron in chains, Shelob sternly responds, "Why would I do that, Rainmaker? You and Sauron are one." Yikes, if the boot fits, you know. I'll touch more on this point later as it makes more sense down the line. Although Shelob appears as an antagonist, appearances are often not reality. After losing the Palantir to Sauron, Eltariel, the Blade of Galadriel, saves Talion and groups up with the duo to save Shelob as Sauron is coming for the new ring. In a quick interaction with Eltariel, Celebrimbor tells her to give them the light of Galadriel as he is drawn to literally any power at this point. Shit, he'd probably become a fucking spider or a sexy old woman if he could be stronger. Eltariel quickly snaps at him that it will stay with her and they take off. It's almost comedic at this point how much Celebrimbor is drawn to power. He's like a little brother who sees you play something and then instantly wants to play and won't leave until he can. If only there was a second controller we could leave unplugged for Celebrimbor so he could pretend to play. Talion and Celebrimbor manage to save Shelob, but with the help of Eltariel. Shelob then entrusts the ring to Talion, and seemingly Talion is alone because this time when she talks to Talion and gives him the ring, Celebrimbor is not present. I think Shelob's most likely avoiding Celebrimbor as she plans to save the world instead of letting Celebrimbor have his way for her vengeance. A short confrontation comes between Eltariel and the duo as Eltariel wants them to destroy the ring immediately. Celebrimbor says the ring belongs to them, and then Talion says they need the ring to defeat Sauron as this ring is different. A similar sentiment to Celebrimbor kind of makes me feel like Celebrimbor can influence Talion's thinking for his own will at times. After all, the two are one. The next move is to build an army to once and for all defeat Sauron and his forces. They first dominate the Olog Bruise, who drops the very popular quote, "Bright Lord, Dark Lord," same thing really. Which is some good foreshadowing, but honestly, if you paid attention to Shelob, then this is more redundant information as she already said Celebrimbor and Sauron are one. Besides, all of what Shelob says is foreshadowing, as she essentially sets everything up. This is all Bruise really adds to Celebrimbor's character, so he probably won't be mentioned again. The next big conflict comes with the Nazgul, who's formerly King Helm Hammerhand. Ignoring the goofy-ass name, he was a fierce king who was dying when Sauron and Celebrimbor came to him with a ring of power that would give him life, but ended up bringing him torment. Talion is furious at Celebrimbor for giving those kings the rings, but Celebrimbor defends himself by saying he was deceived, and I do think he was deceived, but Talion's next point's kinda killer. If Celebrimbor knew what the rings did to the men, why would he craft yet another? Celebrimbor simply defends it with the same bullshit answer that it is needed to dominate the orcs for their army so they can beat Sauron. Talion responds by saying, "No matter the cost." The trademark of Celebrimbor. An elf who has always been too ambitious for his own good because he could care less about the lives of many as long as his own is not spent in vain. With an army built, Talion, Celebrimbor, and Eltariel track down Isildur until they meet on the battlefield for the last time. The Bright Lords versus the Dark Lords forces. After a tough one-on-one battle, Talion finally bests the Nazgul Isildur and goes to dominate him. Celebrimbor wants him as a soldier, but Talion, after seeing how the man was corrupted by the One Ring, and then the rings of power to be a slave of Sauron, releases Isildur to death. It is at this point that Celebrimbor loses it. He shows his true colors and the selfish person he is under that glowing aurora. Celebrimbor had tried to dominate Isildur to add him to the army, and he says he will also dominate Sauron and his armies for his own use. Celebrimbor claims Sauron cannot be destroyed, and so he must instead be controlled. He reveals it all and even says it's not about Talion's petty vengeance, or his own, which to me shows that since the beginning, Celebrimbor has been plotting because in Shadow of Mordor, he was all about the vengeance for both of them. When it suits Celebrimbor, he will agree, but when he finds something else, he will switch with no remorse. Celebrimbor then casts Talion aside as nothing more than a vessel, and instead goes off with Eltariel, who he is manipulated by pushing his stance for eradicating all evil through control. Celebrimbor once again misses the point as his ego continues to become even cloudier. It is not that Sauron cannot be defeated, it is that there is always evil. Evil comes from good, and good comes from evil. Morgoth came before Sauron, and if Celebrimbor had his way, he would come after Sauron as the threat to Middle-earth. There will always be evil threats, which is why we need people like Talion, not Celebrimbor. It is why with the ring, Shelob wanted nothing to do with Celebrimbor, but everything with Talion. She could see the outcome and had to force the outcome where Talion could get his way and Celebrimbor would fail. The two may have shared one body for almost the entire series, but their minds stayed very separate. Celebrimbor, with the ring and Eltariel, moves on to Sauron to defeat him once and for all. The battle is hard fought, with Sauron giving it everything he has, but he is forced to submit as the power of Galadriel, the ring, and the Wraith prove too much to be even for him. With the upper hand, Celebrimbor begins dominating Sauron, but because Shelon separated him and Talion, Sauron can catch Celebrimbor off guard and cut the ring from Eltariel's fingers. Celebrimbor and Sauron then fuse and become locked into a war with each other in the flaming eye that watches over Mordor. In the end, when the One Ring is destroyed, Sauron dies, and Celebrimbor likely meets the same fate. Because of the existence of the second ring though, we don't know if Celebrimbor dies, but without a third game, I believe he passed because his reason for staying a Wraith was to get at Sauron. With Sauron gone, I don't think Celebrimbor should exist. Whatever the status of Celebrimbor is though, he most likely does not get the happy ending of Talion. Talion finds peace, knowing that he did everything for Middle-earth to save it and can now be with his family in death. Celebrimbor gets nothing. He loses. Against Sauron, against Talion, against Shelob, and against time. If he dies, maybe he finds his family, or maybe he's cast somewhere else for all of his fucking misdoings. If he still roams Middle-earth as a Wraith, then honestly he's worse off. He's still away from his family, still reveling in vengeance, and trapped living in his defeat and death until the second ring is destroyed. But what matters is Celebrimbor got what he deserved. Celebrimbor is the antagonist of Shadow of War and debatably of Shadow of Mordor. In Shadow of Mordor, he does oppose Talion because he lies and says they are both banished in death together, but when Talion finds out Celebrimbor can release him, he does not force or even tell him, as he has things to achieve first. It's also up to debate if Celebrimbor was lying to Talion about knowing his past to manipulate him. I think Celebrimbor is the antagonist along with Sauron in both games because they are one. Sauron was good at manipulating everyone, even getting the elvish king Celebrimbor manipulated. I doubt Celebrimbor didn't learn anything from his experience with Sauron, especially since everyone recognizes they are the same. He had the intention from the beginning to not eradicate Sauron, but to control him and his whole dominion. Of course, all of this comes from whatever it takes. Manipulating a man's pain and anger to be used as a vessel, do it. Let a city be destroyed to stop Sauron from getting another weapon, do it. Build a new ring that could create another Sauron, do it. And drop your vessel with zero remorse, whom you have used since the beginning to get everything you wanted, do it. Celebrimbor isn't just an antagonist, he's actually evil. If he could be Sauron, he would, without a doubt. He does everything because he has an irrational drive to be the most powerful force in Middle-earth. It is strange because when he was a king, he had a family that he cared about, but when they were killed, he lost it. Through vengeance and then being corrupted by the ring, Celebrimbor falls from his elvish heritage and becomes a regular human clamoring for the ring and with it, power. Today, everyone is battling for money and everything that comes with it, because everything physical can ultimately be bought. Do you know what else can be used to get everything? Obviously power, come on, you knew that. If Celebrimbor obtained the ring, he probably thought he would be fulfilled even with all of his family still dead. It's a human desire. An elf who lives thousands of years would need a family to share infinite love with. Power could never be enough for those thousands of years. You need that family or at least something to give such a long and beautiful life substance. When you only live like 100 years max, things are kind of different. This is why we all want the best paying job. You go to college to get the credentials to earn a higher paying job than others. You work hard in sports to get that big bag. You work the streets to survive no matter the cost, and you become a politician so eventually you can lobby for some big companies so you can screw over your citizens and also make some money, I guess. The point is, Celebrimbor shouldn't be who he is, but he is for some reason. Even as an elf, he is far worse off than a human who is banished from Gondor and forced to work the Black Gate instead of an execution. It's that bad. You have it all and you still can't help humanity. In the intricate dance of desire for wealth, power, and meaning, the paradox of Celebrimbor's struggles underscores a universal truth, that even in the pursuit of material success, the intangible elements of love, family, and genuine connections remain indispensable for a truly fulfilled existence. It is the reason Talion goes off into death with a smile on his face, and Celebrimbor goes down in defeat and finds no happy ending for his struggles. That's going to be it for today. I analyzed Talion's character about 2 months ago if you're interested in that video, and honestly did not plan to make another Shadow of Mordor / War video, but shout out to LoresNyor6504 because they asked, so I delivered because I'm just that guy. It took so long to write because I honestly didn't know where I was going with it, toyed around with some different ideas, but ended up on what I have today. And then I just got busy with some other things, so sorry about that, LoresNyor, but if you're here, drop a comment, dog. And if anyone else is still watching, let me know what you think of the video and take care of yourselves out there. Until next time, see ya.